Hi, fourth graders. We're back in the garden reading Bailey's School Adventures, Ghosts Don't Eat Potato Chips. Chapter 3, Smarty Pants. Eddie caught up with Howie at the oak tree on the playground. The giant tree made a perfect Saturday morning meeting place for the kids from Bailey Elementary School. Two other third graders, Lisa and Melody, were waiting for them. Lisa giggled and pushed back her blonde hair. "What happened to you?" "It looks like you've been slimed by the Loch Ness Monster," Melody said. Howie squeezed his t-shirt and water oozed onto his tennis shoe. "Hosehead tried to squirt me into the next county." "I was just trying to cool you off," Eddie told him. "After all, you were so hot you were seeing things." "What's he talking about?" Melody asked. Howie shook his wet head, and splattered water on his friends. "I saw someone looking out his crazy aunt's window." He also saw potato chips so smart they could win a spelling bee, Eddie laughed. Howie's face turned red. Maybe the chips were a coincidence, but there really was somebody in the attic. "It was probably Eddie's aunt," Melody told Howie. "No, she's sick in bed," Howie said, "and she lives all by herself." Lisa touched Eddie on the shoulder. "I didn't know your sweet aunt was sick." "There's nothing sweet about that old bat," Eddie snickered. "Eddie, you shouldn't talk about sick people that way," Lisa said. "You guys are missing the point," Howie interrupted. "What if there really is somebody hiding up in that attic?" "No one's up there except your loony imagination," Eddie laughed. "I told you, it was just the tree's shadow." "It couldn't be a shadow," Melody's told him. "How do you know that, Miss Smarty Pants?" Eddie asked. "You weren't there." "It's been cloudy all day," Melody snapped. "You can't have shadows without sun." Howie pointed a finger at Eddie. "She's right." "Maybe you better call the police," Lisa said. "Police don't chase shadows," Eddie laughed. "But there could be a crazy lunatic just waiting for the chance to rob your aunt," said Howie. Eddie shook his head. "Nobody would want to rob my aunt. She's so poor she can't even afford to fix her house." "Still, wouldn't you feel terrible if something happened to your aunt and you didn't help her?" Lisa asked. Howie nodded. "At least tell her." "But we just got here," Eddie snapped. "We'll tell her later." "Stop thinking about yourself," Lisa said. "You better warn her now before something awful happens." "Something awful has happened," Eddie said. "I listened to my silly friends. If you goody-goodies are so worried about Aunt Matilda, you can go with me. Meet me at her house at 7 o'clock when I take supper to her, and don't be late." His friends watched Eddie stomp away from the tree toward some boys playing softball. "Are you sure there was someone in the window?" Melody asked Howie. "I know what I saw," Howie said slowly, "and it was no shadow." Chapter 4, The Legend. At 7 o'clock, Eddie, Howie, Lisa, and Melody all stared up at the attic window. Lisa's eyes were big and round. "You didn't tell me your aunt lived in a haunted house." "You're as bad as Howie," Eddie told her. "Next you'll be seeing things too." "Don't you know the legend behind this house?" Lisa asked. 3 years ago, weird things started happening at all hours of the night. Strange lights and funny noises came from the attic." "What kind of noises?" Melody asked. "Ghostly footsteps," Lisa said seriously, "and whistling." "That's all stupid nonsense," Eddie interrupted. "It is not," Lisa snapped. "My dad told me that ghosts can't rest if something they did during their lives is causing their loved ones to suffer. They're doomed to wander until someone rights the wrong for them." Eddie shook his head and pushed open the squeaky gate. "Then you'll never rest, 'cause you're always making me suffer." "Maybe, but that's what Howie saw," Lisa said firmly. "What?" Melody asked. "A ghost," Lisa whispered. "And maybe your head is full of Rice Krispies," Eddie muttered under himself as he headed up the sidewalk. "My aunt may be crazy." crazy, Eddie told her on the porch, but she's no ghost. How can you be sure, Melody asked. Because you have to be dead to be a ghost, and Great Aunt Matilda is too mean to die, Eddie joked as he banged on the front door. Just like before, the second floor window creaked open and Aunt Matilda peered down at them. Quit that racket! How's a sick woman supposed to get any rest with you pounding on the door? Eddie held up his grandmother's casserole dish. Should I just throw this in the trash? What? Let me starve? Aunt Matilda snapped. Bring it up here and don't be all day about it. I told you she was crazy, Howie whispered to Lisa as they went in the house. She's not crazy, Lisa said. She's just cranky because she doesn't feel well. Then she hasn't felt well since 1942, Eddie said as he led them to his aunt's bedroom. Aunt Matilda was still in bed. Her cover still looked like a warthog had been rooting in them, and the mound of used tissues on the floor had grown a foot. Aunt Matilda reached out her hands for the casserole dish and a fork. How many kids does it take to bring an old woman dinner? Lisa smiled. My name is Lisa, and this is Melody. It's nice to meet you. Ha! Aunt Matilda said as she dug into her dinner. We came to tell you something, Melody added, but she never got the chance because Aunt Matilda took a big bite of the casserole and spit it out all over the bed. I can't eat this! It's cold as a park bench in February. You'll have to heat it up in the oven. We'd be happy to, Lisa chirped as she picked up the cold dish. Her 3 friends followed her out of the room. Aunt Matilda called after them. Come back up while it's heating so I can keep an eye on you. The kids hurried to the kitchen. I've got better things to do than play nursemaid to an old grouch, Eddie complained. Now, Eddie, you shouldn't talk about your great aunt that way. It won't take long to heat this up, and then we can tell her about the attic, Lisa said. How do you work the stove anyway? Melody asked. Do I look like Betty Crocker? I've never used an oven in my life, Eddie admitted. Me neither, Howie said. Eddie twirled the knob. My grandmother does it all the time, so it can't be hard. Lisa stuck the casserole in the oven, and they went back upstairs. They were upstairs in the hall when they heard a thump. Listen, Howie hissed. 4 kids stirred in the middle of the dusty hallway. It sounds like something fell over in the attic. Thump, thump, thump. Sounds like footsteps to me, Melody whispered. Somebody is up there. Or else it's the ghost, Lisa gulped as she started backing down the hall. Melody grabbed Lisa's arm. We've got to warn Aunt Matilda. Calm down, Eddie laughed. It's probably just rats. I've never heard rats whistle, Howie said hoarsely as a high-pitched melody floated down from above. And that's where we'll stop for today.